Hey Lewis, thanks for jumping in here so we can record this video for our community. Um, we've had a few people reaching out talking about deploying software with Intune, and this is deploying software to a PC through Intune, not the iPads. We'll do that on a separate video. Um, so a couple things that we've discovered are that in order to deliver software, there are two different methods, not methods, two different paths that we're going to take. If we're deploying software based on MSI, we can deploy it right to a PC grouping. But if we are going to deploy apps from the Microsoft Store, the business store, or the education store, which I believe are the same thing, it has to be user-based. So forgive my beautiful handwriting, but this is trying to depict if we're going to use MSI, it's going to use a PC. Otherwise, it's going for a user account, and we'll explain that as we go later. Anything else you want to comment on there?
Actually, yes, I did learn something. Depending on what the app is from the Microsoft Store for Education, it can be deployed at the device level. It depends on the app. Also, if you're trying to deploy an app to a device, you want to make sure, from the App Store, you want to make sure that your device meets the system requirements that are posted in the App Store. For example, this lovely Microsoft Whiteboard app that you see David using right now is available in the App Store, but one of the requirements is that the device has to have integrated touch. So when I tried to deploy this app to my desktop computer here in the office, it failed, and it said my computer was not compliant. And I had to dig around to find out, oh, it needs certain hardware requirements, otherwise it won't install. So you do have to be mindful of that as you proceed.
Cool. All right, in order to be efficient, I've opened a few tabs here. If I have to reload them, I apologize. So the first thing to note is that for the PC deployment, when you're enrolling PCs, you're going to want to set up a user account that is specifically set up for enrolling devices. And you do this under device enrollment managers, and that is where you establish this account. It's important because this account can install 1,000 or thousands of machines. I can't remember the number. Whereas a regular account can only do between 5 and 15. Is that correct, Lewis? Lewis, I'm not sure, but we just lost you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a limit on regular user accounts. They can only deploy a maximum of up to 15 devices, whereas a device enrollment manager can have up to 1,000 devices enrolled under that username. Sorry, I was muted there for a second.
Very good. All right, so that is, again, a device enrollment manager. All right, so after that's established, you would then jump to a computer and you would go ahead and enroll that computer into your Intune program. And we're not going to talk a lot about this, but this is a step you have to do. And if you go in your search on a Windows 10 machine, Lewis, there's a build that you were mentioning before, right?
Yeah, you need to be running, I believe it's at least build 1703, but it may require 1709 in order to natively join Windows 10 to a MDM. And I think we just lost David.
Sorry, I was pausing. They were making an announcement.
Oh, okay.
All right, so you can type in MDM, hit connect, and you can see here we're attached to our Azure with, this is my colleague's account right now, but because I think he's actually logged in. But yes, he's logged into our test machine. However, if I logged in with our local admin, which is that account, you would see that here. You can click in here, get info, and force a sync here as well. And we may talk about a little bit about that later and how to confirm that something's syncing. All right, so if I jump over here, again, to get here, I'm going through Intune, groups, all groups, and I'm searching for the groups. We've set up new groups by clicking new, giving it a name, and assigning a device to it. In this case, you'll see we've got, for both of our paths, I've set up one that is just for the devices, where we would enroll the device itself. And for the other group, I've got it so that we would enroll a user. All right, so if I jump into the devices here, you can see I've got one device set up. That device is going to be our test machine, which you just saw. And if I were to jump into my users, you'll see that I've got one user, and that's my colleague who's offered to be a guinea pig. All right. For right now, we're going to stick with the device enrollment first. And if we jump to my next tab, again, I just got here by going to Intune, mobile apps. We've got a piece of software that we have. This is not the right one, and I apologize. Let me pick one that we can install. I was trying to be all prepared, Lewis. So if I go to Intune, mobile apps, you can see I've got a bunch of iOS devices for the iPad, company portal. Let me look for one that we uploaded earlier. I think it was called Fox Reader or something like that. Foxit Reader. Okay. So Foxit Reader we've uploaded, and this is an MSI file. And this is where we can do our assignments. And to do that, we would click on assignments, and we would say select a group, and then we would pick the group that we want. In this case, it's the devices, and we would say required and save. And then once the devices sync, it should force the software onto your designated devices that are within this group. Lewis, is there anything else you want to add there?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
Okay. The only thing that I think that's important is if it's the first time that you're doing this, it's not really apparent which options to choose. So if I were going to add something, I'm going to say add a new app. When you select the type, in order to select the MSI file, you want to choose line of business app. And that is where then you're going to select the file, upload it, and give it configuration information. It's pretty straightforward. The only trick was line of business app. Am I forgetting anything there, sir?
Nope, that's it. You're good.
All right. So again, once you went through that and you tell it that you want to assign it and deploy it, in theory it's deployed. We know there's a little more syncing that you may want to encourage, and we'll talk about that in 1 second. So let's jump over. If we want to deploy some of these apps from the business store or education store, you would go to the education store or the business store, and you would pick an app that you're interested in deploying. Lewis, what looks interesting to you?
How about, what's it called? Khan Academy.
Is it right in front of me and I don't see it?
No, you may have to search for it. Right in front of you. Why would I pick one of those?
I don't know. How do you spell it?
K-A-H-N. I take that back. I'm sorry. It's K-H-A-N. My own dyslexia got in the way there for a second.
Wait, Khan Academy. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click on it. And then it was pointed out, make sure that we're Shop for My School is available, correct?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're in the business store or the um, the Microsoft Store for Education. You don't want to try deploying from the regular Windows Store because you won't get the same options when you go to deploy. If that makes any sense at all.
Totally. All right, so I've clicked on that, and then I think it's going to take a little bit to turn up, but let's go look for it. All right, we're gonna have to wait for con to turn up. But anyways,
if you click your Windows Store or Microsoft Store for Business over on the left, no, in Azure or in Intune. Yep, down. No, right there. Yes. Click Sync, and it will force a sync with your Windows Store. And it shouldn't take all that long to synchronize.
every once in a while, I find that you have to come out and back in again. So as well. So if it's not there, close out, log back in, and a lot of times it'll be there. Voila.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm going to click on it. We're going to go ahead and deploy this one as well, because then hopefully we can see that syncing. We're going to assign it. We're going to select a group. This group is going to be Intune. And again, in this case, I'm not choosing the computer. I'm choosing the users to deploy to. I'm going to require it because I don't want them having the option. I actually want them to install it. And it's a user license. I'm going to hit save.
We're going to pause right here for a second, David. If you can click on the license type, you'll see that for this particular app, there is no device licensing. So it has to be deployed to a group that has users in it. If device licensing were available and that's what you wanted to do, your group would have to have devices in it in order for that to work. In terms of the types, if you can click type, Dave. Just to show what some of these things actually mean, if you specify it as available, it'll appear in the Intune corporate company portal app and allow people to download it manually. If you click not applicable, you can exempt certain groups. Required is the option we're choosing, which will not prompt anybody to install it, but just straight up install it. And then uninstall can be used to remove the app from the machine. I've used Intune to deploy things like the Java MSIs, and you know how often they release new versions of Java. All I have to do when there's a new version out is go into the old version, say uninstall, add the new version, and say required, and it will uninstall the old version and install the new version for me.
Pretty good info. So is there a way when you're in the store to determine if it is a user license or not?
I do not believe so.
All right. That'd be pretty handy.
I think it depends on the hardware, some of the hardware requirements for the app.
Okay. All right. So in this case, you've watched us deploy some software to the user. And you've seen how to set up and deploy it for the MSI. So both of these should turn up on our test machine. So let me bring up our test machine here. Okay. And Lewis has a beautiful method for seeing this happen. So we're going to go to Task Manager. And we're going to organize it by CPU.
Yep. CPU highest to lowest.
Okay, and then let's go ahead and split the screen. All right, I'm gonna hit sync. Do you want to explain it?
Yep. So the way you know your machine is syncing, if you're looking in the task manager, you'll see this host process for OMA-DM client. That's the process built into Windows that is the MDM client. And so when you see that task pop up and there's activity on that task, you know it's communicating with the MDM, and it's doing what MDM clients do. It's a good way of knowing that it's actually doing something as opposed to just sitting there, not doing anything.
Because sometimes with Intune or any MDM really, you can wait a while and you're wondering, is anything happening? Is it really syncing? You go away for coffee, you come back, and it's still not there for some reason.
Right.
So this is a really nice way to force a sync locally. Now you also have the option of forcing the sync through Intune itself. So if I were to go to Intune and I go to Devices, and under All Devices, and you find that machine, when you come to the right side up here, you've also got the ability to force a sync by clicking on this here. Okay. If I do it this way, and a lot of times you're not actually at the machine that you're trying to send it, you might get a ticket from a student or a staff member saying, hey, the software is not turned up yet. This is where you can force that sync a few times. And I don't know if this trick is true for the PCs, but on the Mac side, we've also found if something hasn't turned up, it's worth changing it from required earlier, hitting save, and then requiring it again. And sometimes that resolves that issue and pushes it out to that machine where it's missing. Have you found that as well, Lewis?
Yeah, so whenever you change a policy assignment or a deployed app, Intune will attempt to contact all the affected clients and say, hey, you need to check in, something has changed. It may take some time for Intune to do that on its own. So these methods allow you to kind of force that process beyond its usual time intervals. And you'll notice Khan Academy has just been installed.
Yeah, as you can see, we're good. It was pretty smooth. Lewis, is there anything we're forgetting to tell our fellow colleagues?
No. The big thing is just make sure you're working in the Windows Store for Business. Remember that MSI-based installations are called line of business apps. So don't look for MSI installation when you're going to add your program that you want to deploy. It's called a line of business app. And again, depending on what the requirements of the individual app are, you may be able to deploy to devices, but more than likely you'll have to deploy to users.
Well, guys, I hope this proves useful to you. Funny enough, the process has proved useful to me. So, Lewis, thanks for all your help today. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. My pleasure.
Talk to you all soon. Bye.
Take care.